What's up, guys? I'm out here at Jessica's greenhouse because the next two videos I've got for you are going to take place here. One of them is going to be the building of the mosaic table, which I'm very much looking forward to, but that's actually not going to be this video. And the reason why is because a lot of the stuff I'm going to be explaining and going over in this video will help us and help you understand what I'm doing when I go to build that table. So look for that video coming up after this one. This video is going to be about building the black iron pipe plant hanging rail above Jessica's workstation that's behind me. So I've used black iron pipe for a lot of different applications. I've built desks with them, lots of different shelving, different spacings, widths, heights. In our house that we're currently living in, I did a hanging plant rail around our family room windows. That kind of gave me the idea to do that in the greenhouse as well. Black iron pipe is very versatile stuff. They got lots of different options, different angles and connectors, and we'll go over some of the stuff that we're going to use in this one. And then honestly, I hope that it sets you guys free to come up with your own stuff and use it however you guys can think up and see fit. If you're going to be doing any kind of black iron pipe project, I highly suggest that you go through a design phase. Draw out what you're thinking about doing, get a count of how many fittings and different pieces you're going to need. It'll save you a massive headache in the long run. To start us off on the design phase, I wanted to go over some of the components and what they're called. So we're going to use the app for Home Depot to go over some stuff. So you put in the search bar black iron pipe and this is what's going to come up. Now for this particular application, we're going to be using 3/4 inch pipe. Obviously you can see here that there's a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. I've used 1 inch before. I know that they even make it bigger than that, but I like the diameter of the 3/4 inch for the hooks and the size of hooks that come on hanging baskets. So we're looking for 3/4 inch. So some of the key components we need to be paying attention to is like this 90-degree fitting. So that's a fitting. Let's see, a T is a fitting. So that's a 1/2 inch iron T fitting. And then you got the flanges, caps, anything that essentially combines two of the pieces of black iron pipe is considered a fitting. There's another T. Okay, so that's a flange. Flanges is what you use to secure your project to the wall, the floor, or whatever you're doing. At longer lengths, it's called black iron pipe. So the smaller fittings are largely referred to as nipples. I didn't come up with the naming of this. I've never worked with gas line before. I'm sure that there's a reason. But when I'm saying, hey, you need this size nipple, I'm referring to a shorter cut of black iron pipe. If you notice, like at the longer lengths, 18, it's still called black steel pipe. At anything longer than that, 48 inches black steel pipe, and then you get back into your 12 inches and less, it's called a nipple. All right, so now that we understand the names of the components we're going to be using, let's hop over to the photo of the greenhouse so we can go over the design and figure out how many of each fitting style and length of pipe we're going to need to accomplish this. Okay, so here's the photo I've got to help explain the design process. And so we're going to essentially be hanging this plant hanger. And we're going to start by securing it right here with a flange. So I'm going to draw a circle to represent the flanges. All right, and then it's going to come across. All right, and this is going to be our first connection. So here we're actually going to use a T. So I'm going to put a T right here to connect up and over. So then, based off my measurements, we need a nipple of about 6 inches. Right, and then that's going to go into a 90. So I'm going to do an L. Right, and that 90 is going to come and turn. And on the end of that, we'll do another flange that actually screws into this support system right here. All right. Then we're going to back to another pipe. It's going to come underneath this side of the board into another T, which will go up into another 90 and into a flange. Okay, now one thing to point out, and I'm going to go ahead and mark it on this photo, is that to go from the 90 to the flange, you actually have to get a nipple that goes in between those. They're called carry-throughs or something like that. They're honestly different websites, so like Lowe's and Home Depot actually have different names for them. But essentially all it is a 1-inch nipple that's just all threads. It's threads all the way through. To attach a flange to a fitting, you have to use one of these short 1-inch or 1.5 inch. It's really, you can decide how long you want it to be. In this application, I wanted as little spacing between the flange and the 90 as possible, and so I'm using the smallest one I can get. So we're going to come off that T and come back over to a flange that secures to this side of the greenhouse. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 points of connection. So now I can get a count of how many flanges I need, and I've got 4 circles, so we need 4 flanges. I've got 1, 2 90s, right? And then we'll need 2 6-inch nipples, so we'll mark that down too. And then we'll need 2 of the 1-inch. Okay, the reason I do drawings like this is so, as you just saw, when I'm done, I can literally just go through and count different fittings and different pipe sizes. So the last component we'll need is the pipe that's going to run, you know, in between the connections. So here, here, and here. Now those measurements are actually all 3 different, and that's just honestly typical in a framing job like this. To get everything to match up and stay exactly even spacing wise is a little difficult, and honestly wasn't that high of a priority considering the type of building that this is. And that's not a big deal. Now, one thing I will point out is that this is going to be very difficult to get this to line up perfectly, and we're going to have to make it as precise as possible to make sure that all of these are fitting right where they need to be able to secure them to the different boards. So to accomplish this, we're going to get 3 10-foot long pieces of pipe, and then we'll have to get them cut and threaded to a very specific measurement for each piece. That's going to be probably the hardest part of accomplishing this. So that's our material list. Those are the fittings we'll need, and now we've got to do the hard work of locating all of this material. Once I knew what I needed, it was time to get to work on getting it. I did have to go to 3 different places to get the parts I needed just for the hanging plant rail. I also had to go to 2 other stores on top of that to get the stuff I needed for the future table build. Let's go over the 3 stores I had to go to accomplish this project. All right, so here we've got our long pieces. These are the 10-foot pieces that we got from Home Depot. All right, but now I got these at Home Depot, but I did not get them cut to size because, you know, each of those 3 sections had to be cut at a different length. So I went ahead and got the 10-foot sticks, and then we actually ended up going to a local hardware store in Batesburg to get them cut. And I think he charged me like $6 or something to cut all 3 of those and rethread the ends. All right, we've got our 2 6-inch nipples, we've got our 4 flanges, we've got the 2 closed nipples. These are the ones I was talking about that are just threaded all the way through, that you will attach to, let's say, the end of this 90, right, which then gives the threads for the flange to attach to there. You know, you can't attach a flange to the 90 without having these threads. All right, these 2 I got at Ace Hardware. The flanges we got at Home Depot, and so were the 90s and the T's. So it was 3 different stores to get the stuff. 2 to actually purchase the materials, and 1 to get the pipe cut to length. Sometimes you'll hit a Home Depot up that has someone who knows how to run the cutter and threader. Most of the time that's not the case. The ones around here don't have that. So when I moved here and I was building the shelves in our house, I had to find another solution. That's when Papa T suggested I go down to Roof Hardware in downtown Batesburg. Very reasonable cost. A small hardware store like that is going to be a great resource in doing a project like this. I'll go over the other tools that we have for this. Just need an impact with the appropriate bit to cover the types of screws you're using. I've got star-headed screws at 1 5/8 and 2 inches. And then I've got a can of black spray paint. You don't have to paint yours. That's really just our personal preference, especially in a greenhouse situation where there's gonna be a lot of water, moisture, humidity, and things like that. The black iron pipe, even though it does have an oily coating and it's not galvanized, so it does rust. I'm not a big fan of the rust, getting on stuff whenever you're having to work with it, touch it, things like that. Plus, obviously, rust is the deterioration of the metal itself. And so we have always painted ours to help protect it and keep that rust from happening. Now, we use black. You don't have to use black. I mean, honestly, you could probably paint it any color, depending on what shade it's going to be. You might have to primer it a few times first if you were going to go lighter, but I'm sure it would work just fine. So, you know, color's optional. You guys can go any direction you want to with that. We generally have only ever done black, so if we ever do anything different, it would be the first time. I'm gonna do the assembly outside so we can go ahead and get it painted outside, let it dry. And then honestly, my plan is to move this into the greenhouse as one solid piece. I'm gonna have to get help, obviously, to hold it. It's gonna be too long for me to be able to do it myself. But I think with one other person, probably get Jessica to help me, we should be able to lift it into place, and I should be able to put some screws in it to hold it. If my measurements are right, which I really hope that they are, because you can't just like cut these shorter. I'd have to go back to the hardware store and get them to shorten it, but I think that they're right. If everything's correct, I should be able to just lift this into place, screw it in, and be done. All right, we got assembly done, and I'm sure from that clip it looked very simple. It was very simple to get it just generally put together. What was not simple was getting it test fitted into the greenhouse and having everything line up. I had taken my measurements, made my calculations for a rough estimate of how things were going to thread together, what were the spacings going to be like. I've done this a few times and I've gotten fairly good at guessing. It's really hard to get precise, and for this particular style of job, there was no play. It had to be very precise on the long piece measurements. I went ahead and brought it into the greenhouse, test fitted it, and realized that my first measurement actually was spot on. It fit perfectly. The second measurement was too long by about 4 inches. I must have misread the measuring tape. And then the last piece was about 1 inch too long. So I had to take those 2 pieces back into town, get them recut and rethreaded. You know, that's one of the issues with working with this material is if you make a mistake on your lengths or your spacing, you have to go back to the place where you can get it cut and get it adjusted. You can't just cut it at home unless you happen to have a pipe cutting and rethreading machine. I don't have one. I probably should invest in one at this point because I've done so many of these jobs, but we are where we are. After getting back from town, getting those 2 pieces adjusted, I put it back together, test fitted it again, and it's gonna work.
This particular install was probably the most difficult install that I've done with the black iron pipe. That reasoning being, like I've said previously in this video, is because of how precise the spacing has to be to get all this to line up like it's supposed to. I think it turned out really good. I'm pleased with the end result. I am covered in sweat because I am working in a greenhouse that was built to retain heat, and it's not even that hot outside, but it is working well. I think Jessica's gonna love it. I've already got the couple of plants that she's got in hangers hanging up. So that's gonna wrap it up. I appreciate you guys coming along. I hope that this helps with the black iron pipe install, planning, and all of that. We're gonna go through one more black iron pipe project. That's gonna be for the table right here. I'm actually going to be using the black iron pipe material and technique to build the legs and the support. So thank you guys, and I will catch you guys on the next one.